The wind on Vakros Prime carried the scent of blood. Dr. Sarah Chen stopped walking and lifted her hand to check the scanner on her wrist. 3 months alone on this planet had taught her to trust her instincts. And right now, every instinct screamed danger. The reading confirmed it. Massive life signs, recently deceased. Less than 50 meters ahead. She moved forward slowly, her boots crunching on the crystalline sand that covered most of this world. The Terran Survey Corps had sent her here to study the wildlife, to catalog and observe. Most species in the Galactic Council refused assignments like this. They called worlds like Vakros Prime death worlds and wanted nothing to do with them. But humans were different. Humans came from Earth, which the galaxy considered one of the most hostile planets ever discovered. So humans got jobs like this. Sarah pushed through a cluster of blade grass, careful not to let the sharp edges cut her suit, and found the body. The Vakros stalker lay on its side, massive even in death. 6 limbs sprawled at odd angles. Crystalline armor plating that should have been deep blue now looked dull and cracked. The creature was roughly the size of an earth bear, with a long tail and a head that held too many teeth. Sarah had been observing these predators for weeks, always from a safe distance, always with proper equipment between her and them. This one had been killed by something bigger. The wound on its throat was massive, and the ground around it showed signs of a terrible fight. Sarah's scanner showed traces of another predator, something even larger than a normal stalker. An alpha, maybe. She had heard their roars at night but never seen one. The largest specimens could weigh over 500 kilograms and had ruled this territory for decades. A sound made her freeze. It came from a dark opening in the rocks nearby. A den. The sound came again, high-pitched and desperate. Sarah's throat went tight. She knew that sound. Every human who had ever owned a cat or dog knew that sound. It was the cry of something young and afraid. Protocol said she should leave. Protocol said she should mark the location, return to her shelter and report the finding. Let nature take its course. Don't interfere with local wildlife. Those were the rules written by people who had never stood in this exact spot, never heard that exact sound. Sarah walked to the den entrance. The opening was low, forcing her to crouch. She activated the light on her helmet and peered inside. 3 pairs of eyes reflected the beam back at her. Cubs. 3 Vakros stalker cubs huddled together in the darkness. They couldn't have been more than a few weeks old. Their crystalline plates were still soft and transparent, showing the dark skin underneath. They were small, maybe the size of house cats, but their claws were already sharp and their teeth already pointed. The largest cub hissed at her. The sound was meant to be threatening but came out as more of a squeak. All 3 cubs pressed closer together, making themselves as small as possible. Sarah sat back on her heels and thought. The mother was dead. These cubs were too young to survive on their own. They couldn't hunt. They couldn't regulate their body temperature properly yet. And the alpha that killed their mother might return. Cubs of rival predators were often killed to eliminate future competition. She should leave. She knew she should leave. The smallest cub made that crying sound again. Sarah sighed and pressed the communication button on her helmet. Chen to base! I have a situation. Her AI assistant responded immediately. Its voice was calm and neutral. Define situation, Dr. Chen. I've found 3 orphaned Vakros stalker cubs. Mother deceased nearby, killed by what appears to be an alpha male. A pause. Protocol requires non-interference with local wildlife populations. I know the protocol. The cubs will expire without maternal care. This is a natural occurrence, I know that too. Another pause. The AI was learning to recognize her tones of voice. You intend to violate protocol. I'm considering it. Dr. Chen, Vakros stalkers are classified as Class 7 predators. Even juveniles possess claws and teeth capable of inflicting serious injury. Their bite force develops rapidly. By 6 weeks of age, they can exert over 1,000 psi of pressure. Noted. I must advise against direct contact. Sarah looked at the 3 cubs again. They had stopped hissing and were now simply watching her with those large, frightened eyes. The smallest one shivered, its soft plates rippling with the movement. Advice noted, Sarah said. Record that I'm proceeding against recommendation. She reached slowly into the den. All 3 cubs immediately pressed back against the rear wall, and the largest one swiped at her gloved hand. Tiny claws scraped across the armored material. Sarah didn't pull back. She kept her hand extended, palm up, not reaching for them but simply offering. Minutes passed. The cubs stayed pressed against the wall. Sarah stayed perfectly still, hand extended. Her arm began to ache. She ignored it. The smallest cub moved first. It took one hesitant step forward, then another. Its siblings made warning sounds, but the small one kept moving. It reached Sarah's glove and touched it with one paw, then jerked back. Nothing happened. Sarah didn't move. The cub tried again, this time pressing its small nose against her palm. Slowly, carefully, Sarah closed her fingers slightly. Not grabbing, just acknowledging. The cub allowed it. Good, Sarah whispered. That's good. The other two cubs watched. After another minute, the middle-sized one crept forward. Then finally the largest. All three cubs now clustered around her hand, confused but no longer actively afraid. Sarah's scanner chimed a warning. Temperature dropping. Vakros Prime had long nights, sometimes stretching 14 hours, and the twin suns were already low on the horizon. Without their mother's body heat, the cubs would struggle. Their thermoregulation systems weren't fully developed yet. They needed warmth. Making a decision she knew she'd probably regret, Sarah slowly withdrew her hand from the den and sat back. The cubs watched her go with obvious distress. The smallest one made that crying sound again. I'm not leaving, Sarah said quietly. Just give me a second. She stood and walked back to where the mother's body lay. Up close, the violence of the kill was even more apparent. Sarah felt a pang of sorrow. This creature had been protecting its young. It had fought hard. It had lost. I'm sorry, Sarah said to the dead stalker. I'll take care of them. I promise. The wind picked up, colder now. Sarah returned to the den and crouched at the entrance again. The three cubs were huddled together, visibly shaking now. They needed heat soon or they would die. Sarah looked down at her thermal coat. It was designed for extreme cold, with heating elements throughout. It was large, meant to fit over her equipment suit. And it was warm. This was completely insane. She knew it was insane. Sarah unsealed her coat and opened it wide, revealing the warm interior. She positioned herself at the den entrance and waited. The cubs stared at her. She could see them shivering harder now, see their soft plates beginning to dull as their body temperature dropped. Come on, she said softly. I know I'm weird and I smell wrong and I'm probably terrifying, but I'm warm, and you're cold. So how about we make a deal? The smallest cub took the first step out of the den. The smallest cub reached Sarah's boot first. It touched the toe with one tentative paw, then pulled back quickly as if expecting an attack. When nothing happened, it tried again. This time it pressed harder, testing the strange surface. Behind it, the other two cubs watched from the den entrance, their eyes reflecting the fading light. Sarah remained perfectly still. Her arms ached from holding the coat open, but she didn't move. Every human instinct told her to reach down and scoop up the tiny, shivering creature. Every bit of training told her that would be the worst possible move. Let them come to her. Let them make the choice. The small cub took another step. Then another. It was close enough now that Sarah could see the individual crystalline plates on its back, shifting through colors. Her AI assistant had taught her that this was how Vakros stalkers communicated emotion. Right now, the colors showed fear mixed with curiosity and desperate need. That's it, Sarah whispered. I'm not going to hurt you. I promise. The cub climbed onto her leg. Its claws pricked through her pants, but the pain was minimal. It was testing her, trying to understand what she was. Sarah felt the small body shaking against her thigh. So cold. Too cold. The cub made a decision. It crawled forward, moving up Sarah's leg and toward the opening of her coat. Sarah held her breath. The small creature reached the edge of the thermal material and touched it with its nose. Heat radiated from the coat's interior. The cub made a sound, almost a chirp, and pushed forward into the warmth. Sarah felt tiny claws grip her shirt as the cub crawled against her side, burrowing into the space between her arm and her ribs. It was small enough to fit easily, and once inside the coat, it pressed against her with obvious relief. The shivering began to slow one down. 2 to go. The middle cub was braver now, seeing its sibling disappear into the coat without any apparent harm. It scrambled out of the den and rushed across the short distance. This one didn't bother with testing. It went straight for the coat, climbing up Sarah's other leg and pushing in on the opposite side. The largest cub remained at the den entrance. It was bigger than the other two, with darker plates that suggested it was male. He watched his siblings with obvious uncertainty. His plates shifted through warning colors: red, orange, dark purple. He was afraid, but he was also the protector, the one who had hissed first, the one who had tried to defend them all when Sarah first appeared. "Come on, big guy," Sarah said softly. "You're going to freeze out there. And I know you're trying to be brave, but right now brave means staying alive." The large cub took one step forward, then stopped. His plates flashed bright red. A warning, Sarah understood. This one wouldn't come unless he felt he was making the choice, not being forced. She slowly began to close the coat around the two cubs already inside. Not completely, but enough that they were mostly hidden from view. The large cub saw his siblings disappearing and made a distressed sound. That did it. He rushed forward, scrambling up Sarah's leg so fast that his claws dug deeper than the others had. Sarah bit back a gasp of pain. The cub pushed into the coat, shoving between his siblings to get to the center position. All three cubs were now inside her coat, pressed against her sides and stomach, their small bodies seeking heat. Sarah carefully closed the coat around them. The cubs shifted and squirmed, trying to get comfortable. Small claws pricked her repeatedly through her shirt, but she forced herself to remain still. Let them settle. Let them feel safe. The twin suns of Vakros Prime touched the horizon, and the temperature dropped noticeably. Sarah's helmet display showed it falling rapidly. In another hour, it would be below freezing. Without shelter and heat, the cubs wouldn't have survived the night. "AI," Sarah said quietly. "Initiate long-duration monitoring mode. I'm going to be here for a while." "Confirmed," the AI responded. "How long do you estimate?" "However long it takes. Dr. Chen, you cannot maintain this position indefinitely. You require rest. Additionally, movement may become necessary if the Alpha returns." Sarah looked around at the darkening landscape. The dead mother's body was visible from here, already attracting smaller scavengers. If the Alpha did return, she was in a terrible position. She couldn't run with three cubs inside her coat. She could barely move without disturbing them. "If the Alpha comes back, we'll deal with it then," Sarah said. "Your survival odds in a direct confrontation with a Vakros Alpha are less than 15%. Thanks for the optimism." The cubs were settling now. Their squirming had mostly stopped. Sarah could feel their tiny hearts beating rapidly against her. One of them made a small sound, almost like a purr. Her grandmother had raised cats back on Earth, before the colony ships left. Grandma used to say that a purring cat was a happy cat. Maybe it worked the same way for alien predator cubs. Sarah began to hum. It was an old lullaby, something her grandmother had sung to her when she was young. She didn't remember all the words, but the melody was burned into her memory. The vibrations traveled through her chest, and she felt the cubs respond. They pressed closer, their breathing beginning to slow and deepen. Minutes passed, then hours. The suns disappeared completely, and Vakros Prime's night began. Above, 3 moons rose in sequence, casting strange shadows across the crystalline sand. Sarah's helmet adjusted her vision automatically, letting her see clearly despite the darkness. Her legs went numb first, then her back began to ache. She was sitting cross-legged on the ground, leaning slightly forward to accommodate the cubs inside her coat. It wasn't a sustainable position, but she didn't dare move. Every time she even thought about shifting, one of the cubs would stir and make a worried sound. "Dr. Chen," the AI said after the 3rd hour, "your stress hormones are elevated. You are experiencing significant physical discomfort. I recommend extracting yourself from this situation." "Can't," Sarah said quietly. "They're asleep. They are juvenile predators, not human infants. They do not require your continued presence. They're babies who just lost their mother." "Yes, they do." The AI was silent for a moment. "I do not understand this human behavior pattern. You are endangering yourself for creatures that cannot comprehend your sacrifice and may harm you when they wake." Sarah smiled in the darkness. "That's okay. You don't have to understand it. Just keep monitoring for that Alpha." She continued humming. The melody carried across the empty landscape, a human sound on an alien world. Inside her coat, 3 predator cubs slept peacefully, their claws gently gripping her shirt, their warm breath against her skin. Sarah's emergency beacon activated suddenly, filling her helmet with a shrill alarm. She jerked in surprise, and all 3 cubs woke immediately, making frightened sounds. Their claws dug in deeper as they scrambled and tried to figure out what was happening. "Beacon auto-activated," the AI announced. "Your suit detected prolonged immobility and assumed medical emergency. Signal transmitted to nearest Galactic Council station." "Turn it off," Sarah hissed, but it was too late. The damage was done. The cubs were awake and agitated. The largest one was trying to climb out of the coat, his claws catching in the material. "Easy," Sarah said, keeping her voice low and calm despite her racing heart. "Easy, little ones. Everything's okay. Just a loud noise. Nothing to worry about." She started humming again, louder this time, trying to override their fear with something familiar. The smallest cub settled first, pressing back against her. Then the middle one. The large one remained tense for another minute before finally relaxing. But now Sarah's communicator was chiming. Someone had received the emergency signal. Someone was going to call. And she was going to have to explain why she was sitting in the dark on a hostile planet, with 3 baby predators sleeping in her coat. This was going to be interesting. The communicator chimed 3 times before Sarah accepted the call. She pressed the button on her helmet carefully, trying not to move her body and disturb the cubs who had finally settled back into sleep. "Dr. Chen, this is Commander Telev of Galactic Council Station Kepler 9. We received your emergency beacon. What is your status?" Sarah recognized the name. Telev was Zinthari, one of the herbivorous species that made up a large portion of the Council's administrative staff. She had met him briefly during her orientation before coming to Vakros Prime. He had seemed nervous around her then, the way most Zinthari were around humans. They considered Earth a nightmare world and couldn't quite understand why humans were so comfortable on planets that would kill most other species within hours. "Commander Telev, this is Chen. I'm fine." The beacon activated automatically. "Please cancel any rescue response." There was a pause. "Dr. Chen, our sensors show you have been immobile for over 4 hours. Your stress hormones are elevated. Your suit has registered multiple puncture wounds. I cannot cancel rescue protocols with those readings." Sarah closed her eyes and sighed. The cubs stirred slightly at the movement, and she froze until they settled again. "The puncture wounds are minor. I'm immobile by choice." "Really, Commander, I'm okay." "By choice? Dr. Chen, please explain. Are you trapped? Are you injured in a way that prevents movement?" "Not exactly." "Then why have you not moved for 4.7 hours? Sarah looked down at her coat. She could feel the warm weight of the 3 cubs pressed against her, their breathing slow and steady. How was she supposed to explain this? The Zinthari were prey animals. They ran from predators. The concept of voluntarily sitting still while baby predators slept on you would be completely alien to Telev. "Commander, I need you to understand something before I explain. What I'm about to tell you is going to sound strange, but I need you to trust me that I know what I'm doing." Another pause. Longer this time. "Dr. Chen, you are making me very concerned. I found 3 Vakros stalker cubs. Their mother was killed by an alpha. They were going to die from exposure, so I let them use my coat for warmth. They're currently sleeping against me." The silence that followed lasted almost 30 seconds. Sarah watched her helmet display, waiting. Finally, Telev spoke, and his voice sounded strained. "You deliberately approached offspring of a Class 7 predator. You made physical contact. You allowed them to make physical contact with you. Dr. Chen, are you experiencing some kind of mental health crisis? Should I be concerned about your judgment?" "My judgment is fine, Commander." "They're babies. They needed help. They are predators. Even juveniles of that species are dangerous. Our database shows that Vakros stalker cubs develop their hunting instincts within days of birth. Their claws can puncture standard armor. Their bite force increases rapidly as they mature. Dr. Chen, you could be killed." Sarah felt one of the cubs shift in its sleep, its small paw pressing against her ribs. "I'm aware of the risks, Commander. But letting them die wasn't an option. That is exactly what you should have done." Telev's voice rose, the translator struggling to convey his distress. "Non-interference protocols exist for a reason. Nature must take its course. The strong survive. The weak do not. This is how evolution functions." "Maybe for your species," Sarah said quietly, "but humans do things differently." "Yes, we have noticed. Your species has a disturbing tendency to form emotional attachments to dangerous fauna. The Council has multiple reports of humans attempting to touch, feed, or adopt creatures that could easily kill them. There are dozens of incident reports involving humans and their bizarre need to classify lethal predators as cute or baby-like. This behavior makes no logical sense." Sarah smiled in the darkness.
"Yeah, we're weird that way."
"Look, Commander, I appreciate your concern, but I'm not in immediate danger. The cubs are sleeping. Everything is under control." "Everything is not under control. You have been sitting motionless for hours with predators attached to your body. Your mobility is compromised. Your ability to defend yourself is compromised. And according to your earlier reports, there is an alpha in the area. If it returns, what exactly is your plan? That was a good question. Sarah had been trying not to think about that particular problem. I'll handle it if it happens. You will handle a 500-kilogram apex predator with what? Good intentions? I have my neural disruptor, which has an effective range of 10 meters and would at best stun a creature that size for 30 seconds. Dr. Chen, please listen to reason. I'm dispatching a rescue team. They will arrive in approximately 8 hours. They will extract you from this situation safely. No, Sarah said firmly. You can't do that. I absolutely can and will. Your safety is my responsibility. Commander, think about what you're saying. A rescue ship lands near my position. The noise, the vibration, the strange lights. The cubs wake up in a panic. They're frightened, confused, and they're going to react with their instincts. Which means claws and teeth. Someone could get hurt. The cubs could get hurt. This is a bad idea. Telev was quiet for a moment. Then what do you suggest? Let me handle this my way. When morning comes and it's warmer, the cubs will wake naturally. They'll leave the coat on their own. Then I can move to my shelter. But if you send a rescue team now, you're going to create exactly the kind of dangerous situation you're worried about. This is highly irregular. I know, but it's the right call. Trust me. She could hear Telev breathing, a sound that the translator picked up and converted. Finally, he spoke. I will hold the rescue team in orbit. But Dr. Chen, I want constant communication. Every 30 minutes you will check in. If I do not hear from you, I will land that team regardless of the consequences. Do you understand? Understood. Thank you, Commander. Do not thank me. I am documenting this entire incident. There will be a review. Your decision to violate non-interference protocols will have consequences. I'll accept those consequences. Telev disconnected, and Sarah was alone again with the 3 sleeping cubs in the vast darkness of Vakros Prime's night. She shifted slightly, trying to ease the pain in her back, and felt the cubs adjust without waking. Their trust was absolute. They had no idea she was an alien creature from another world. They just knew she was warm and safe. Hours passed. Sarah checked in with Telev every 30 minutes as promised. Each time he sounded more baffled by her continued willingness to remain in her position. Around the 6th hour, his tone changed slightly. Dr. Chen, I have been reviewing human cultural files, specifically information about your species' relationship with animals on your home world. I found something called domestication. Is this what you are attempting? Sarah laughed softly. No, Commander. Domestication takes generations. I'm just helping 3 cubs survive the night. But your species did this on Earth, yes? You took wolves and made them into dogs. You took wild cats and made them into pets. You formed bonds with creatures that were originally predators. That's true. Why? What advantage does this provide? Why would a predator species seek to coexist with other predator species? Sarah thought about that. It was a good question, one that the galactic community had been asking since humans joined the Council. Because we can. Because it makes life better. Because having a dog or a cat or even a bond with wild animals enriches us. It makes us more than just predators. It makes us capable of compassion. Compassion for predators. This is the part we do not understand. My species shows compassion for our young, for our herd members, for other herbivores who might share our resources. But compassion for something that could hunt us, that is foreign to us. Maybe that's what makes humans different, Sarah said. We survived by being good at hunting. But we survived better by also being good at caring for things. The wolves we befriended helped us hunt. The cats we adopted kept our grain stores safe from rodents. We learned that working with other species, even predator species, made us stronger. And you believe this applies to these cubs? I'm not trying to make them into pets, Commander. In a few weeks, they'll be too big and too wild for that. But right now, tonight, they need help. And I can give it. That's enough. Telev was quiet for a long moment. Humans are strange. Yeah, Sarah agreed. We really are. The 8th hour approached. Sarah's body screamed in protest. Every muscle ached. Her legs had gone from numb to painfully tingly. Her back felt like someone had tied it in knots. But the cubs slept on, peaceful and warm, and she refused to disturb them. In the distance, something roared. The sound carried across the crystalline landscape, deep and threatening. Sarah's blood went cold. She knew that sound. She had heard it in recordings, had heard it at night from the safety of her shelter. The alpha was coming back. Inside her coat, the cubs stirred. The roar came again, closer this time. Sarah's helmet display lit up with warnings. Large predator, massive thermal signature, distance approximately 200 meters and closing. Inside her coat, the cubs woke. She felt them tense against her, their small bodies going rigid. They knew that sound. It was the sound that came with their mother's death, with terror and pain and loss. The smallest one made a frightened chirping noise. "Commander Telev," Sarah said quietly, activating her communicator. "We have a situation. I heard the roar. Dr. Chen, your readings show a Vakros Alpha approaching your position. You need to move now." "Can't. The cubs are awake and scared. If I try to move, they'll panic. If you do not move, you will die. Please, Dr. Chen, be reasonable." Sarah looked down at her coat. The cubs were trying to burrow deeper against her, seeking protection from the source of that terrible sound. Her mind raced through options. She could try to run. Her shelter was 200 meters away. She might make it. But the cubs would fall from her coat, confused and exposed, and the alpha would find them. Easy prey, she could stand and fight. Her neural disruptor might buy her 30 seconds against a creature that size. It wasn't much, but it was something. Or she could do something completely insane. "Commander, I need you to record what's about to happen. For the files." "Dr. Chen, what are you planning?" Sarah carefully opened her coat. The cubs tumbled out, mewing in distress. They scrambled around her legs, trying to climb back to safety. She stood slowly, her muscles screaming in protest after hours of immobility. Her legs nearly gave out, but she forced them to hold. The alpha emerged from the darkness. It was massive, twice the size of the dead mother, with crystalline plates so dark they were almost black. Scars covered its body, evidence of decades of fights and victories. Its eyes reflected the moonlight, cold and calculating. It moved with the confidence of a creature that had never met anything it couldn't kill. The alpha saw the cubs first. They were small, vulnerable offspring of a rival it had killed. Predators like this often eliminated young that weren't their own. The cubs backed toward Sarah, their plates flashing colors of pure terror. Sarah stepped between the alpha and the cubs. "Dr. Chen, what are you doing?" Telev's voice was nearly a shriek. Sarah didn't answer. She was too focused on the massive predator in front of her. It had stopped, head tilted, studying her. She could see it calculating. This small, soft creature didn't look dangerous. It didn't have claws or armor. It didn't even have proper teeth. But it had placed itself between the alpha and its prey. Sarah activated her helmet's external speakers. She drew in the deepest breath her lungs could hold, and she roared. The sound that came from her speakers was human, completely human, but amplified and deepened by the audio system. It came from the bottom of her chest, from some primal part of her brain that remembered when humans were prey and had to bluff their way past larger predators. It was the sound of a creature refusing to back down. The alpha's plates shifted colors. Confusion. It had never encountered anything like this. Sarah didn't wait. She took a step forward, then another. She was walking toward a 500-kilogram predator, and every survival instinct in her body was screaming at her to run the other way. But she had learned something in her months on Vakros Prime. She had learned that predators respected strength. They understood territory. They understood challenges, and right now she was challenging an alpha. Sarah spread her arms, making herself as large as possible. She took another step forward. The alpha backed up slightly. Just half a step, but it was something. Sarah roared again, and this time she stomped her foot. The crystalline sand crunched loudly under her boot. "She has gone completely insane," Telev said to someone on his end. "Record everything. The council needs to see this. They need to understand what humans are capable of." The alpha's plates were flashing rapidly now. Red, orange, purple. It was reconsidering. This strange creature didn't smell like prey. It didn't act like prey. It had placed itself protectively over the cubs, claiming them as its own. And it was advancing, not retreating. Sarah took another step. Her hand moved slowly to the neural disruptor on her belt. If this went wrong, she'd have one shot. Literally one shot before the alpha was on her. But she didn't draw the weapon yet. That would signal attack, and she didn't want to fight. She wanted the alpha to leave. Behind her, the cubs were silent. They had stopped mewing and were watching the confrontation with something that might have been awe. Their small plates were shifting through colors rapidly, processing what they were seeing. This strange, warm creature that had held them through the night was now facing down the monster that killed their mother. The Alpha took a full step back. Sarah saw it and pressed her advantage. She roared again and took 2 more steps forward. She was close now, too close, well within the creature's attack range. If it decided to strike, she was dead. But she kept her posture aggressive, her arms spread, her voice loud. The Alpha's plates went a color Sarah had never seen before. A pale blue-green that her database didn't have information on. The massive predator turned its head slightly, breaking eye contact. In predator behavior, that was significant. It was a sign of uncertainty, of backing down. Sarah took 1 more step. The Alpha turned and walked away. It didn't run. That would have been a show of fear, and Alphas didn't show fear. But it walked with purpose back into the darkness, its tail low, its plates still flashing that strange pale color. Sarah stood frozen in place until her helmet sensors confirmed the Alpha was more than 500 meters away and still moving. Only then did she allow herself to collapse to her knees. Her whole body was shaking. Adrenaline flooded her system, making her hands tremble. The cubs rushed to her immediately. They climbed over her, chirping and mewing, their plates flashing colors of excitement and relief. The largest cub, the one who had been most hesitant to trust her, pressed his head against her chest and made a deep, rumbling sound. Dr. Chen. Telev's voice was very quiet. "What just happened?" Sarah laughed, a sound that was half hysteria. "I think I just convinced an Alpha that I was protecting my territory. You made it retreat." "A Vakros Alpha, a creature that has ruled this region for possibly 20 years. You made it walk away." "Yeah. How?" Sarah looked down at the cubs, who were now trying to crawl back into her coat. "Because it recognized what I was doing. I was protecting these cubs. I claimed them, and it understood that challenge. It decided they weren't worth fighting me for. But you are not a Vakros stalker. You are not even from this world. How could it possibly see you as a threat? Because predators recognize other predators, Commander. Even when they look different. Even when they come from different worlds." The Alpha looked at me and saw something it didn't want to fight. Something that was willing to defend its young no matter the cost. There was a long silence. Then Telev spoke very carefully. "Dr. Chen, I need to ask you something, and I need you to answer honestly. Go ahead. Are you claiming those cubs? Are you attempting to adopt them?" Sarah looked down at the 3 small creatures who had crawled back into her coat and were settling against her like they belonged there. She thought about the terror she'd just felt facing down the Alpha. She thought about the long night of sitting still while they slept. She thought about the choice she'd made to violate protocol and help them in the first place. "I don't know," she said honestly. "I didn't plan this. I just wanted to keep them alive through the night. But now they have imprinted on you," Telev finished. "I am looking at the thermal readings from your suit. Those cubs are pressed against you in a specific pattern. It is the same pattern young Vakros stalkers use with their mothers. Dr. Chen, they think you are their parent." Sarah closed her eyes. "That's a problem. That is a massive problem. Those cubs will grow rapidly. In 6 months, they will each weigh over 50 kilograms. In a year, they will be full-sized predators. You cannot possibly care for them. I know. And yet you are not going to give them up, are you?" Sarah felt the warm weight of the cubs against her, felt their trust in their need. She thought about the Alpha walking away, about the choice it had made to recognize her claim rather than fight. She thought about what she'd told Telev earlier, about humans and compassion and the bonds they formed with other predators. "No," she said quietly. "I don't think I am." Telev sighed, a sound that the translator rendered as a long, whistling exhale. "Then I suppose I should inform the Council that we have a new situation on Vakros Prime. A human has adopted 3 Class 7 predators. This will be an interesting report to file. Sorry for the trouble, Commander. Do not apologize, just try not to get killed. The paperwork would be tremendous." Sarah laughed and looked down at the sleeping cubs. The twin suns were beginning to rise on the horizon, painting the crystalline landscape in shades of purple and gold. A new day was starting, and somehow, improbably, she had become a parent to 3 alien predators. What could possibly go wrong? 3 months after the night with the Alpha, Sarah sat outside her shelter watching 3 not-so-small predators play fight in the crystalline sand. They were bigger now, each nearly 20 kilograms with plates that had hardened into proper armor. They were learning to hunt, though their success rate was still comically low. Yesterday, the smallest one had tried to stalk a ground bird and ended up falling face-first into a shallow stream. The Galactic Council had not been happy about Sarah's decision. She had received strongly worded messages. There had been calls for her immediate removal from Vakros Prime. Commander Telev had filed reports. Committees had formed. Debates had happened in chambers far away from this world. And then something interesting occurred. Other xenobiologists began requesting permission to observe. Not the cubs specifically, but the human raising them, because apparently, in the entire history of the Galactic Council, no one had ever successfully formed a bond with a Class 7 predator species. Most species wouldn't even try. It went against every survival instinct they had, but humans were different. Sarah watched as the largest cub, who she had named Shard, tackled his smaller sister, who she called Glint. The third cub, Prism, sat apart from the other two, watching with the serious expression he always wore. He was the careful one, the thoughtful one. Shard was brave but reckless. Glint was curious about everything and constantly got into trouble. "Dr. Chen, you have incoming," her AI announced. Sarah looked up to see a small transport approaching. It landed smoothly 100 meters away and the door opened. Commander Telev stepped out along with 3 other beings Sarah didn't recognize. One was another Zinthari. The other 2 appeared to be Vrex, a species known for their scientific minds and their complete lack of any predatory instincts whatsoever. The cubs noticed the visitors immediately. All 3 stopped playing and turned to watch. Their plates shifted to warning colors. "Easy," Sarah said quietly. "They're friends, probably." Shard moved to stand in front of Sarah, his small body tense. Even at this age, the protective instincts were showing. Glint pressed against Sarah's leg. Prism moved to Sarah's other side, creating a triangle of protection around her. Telev approached slowly, stopping a good 10 meters away. "Dr. Chen, I see the cubs have grown." "They're getting big fast," Sarah agreed. "Another few months and they'll be too large for the shelter. I'm going to need to build an expansion. That is actually one of the reasons we are here." Telev gestured to his companions. "This is Dr. Mirax and Dr. Thorin, xenobiologists specializing in predator behavior. And you know Scholar Venice. They have come to observe and document what you are doing here." Scholar Venice stepped forward slightly. She was Zinthari like Telev, with the same nervous manner around Sarah. "Dr. Chen, what you have accomplished is without precedent. The Council has decided that rather than remove you, they would prefer to study the situation. We hope you will allow us to observe and record." Sarah looked down at the 3 cubs who were still in protective positions around her. "As long as it doesn't interfere with their development or stress them out, I'm fine with observation. But they come first, always." "Of course," Dr. Mirax said. He was Vrex, which meant he had 6 eyes and they were all currently focused on the cubs with obvious fascination. "May I ask how you have managed the bonding process?" "The literature suggests that Vakros stalkers are not capable of forming attachments to other species." "The literature is wrong," Sarah said simply. "They form attachments just fine. You just have to meet them on their terms." "And what terms are those?" Sarah smiled and reached down to scratch Shard behind his auditory ridge. The cub leaned into the touch, his plates shifting to content colors. "Respect, consistency, protection, the same things any young creature needs. Yes, they're predators. Yes, they're dangerous. But they're also intelligent and social. They want connection, just like any pack animal." "Humans are pack animals," Dr. Thorin observed. She was the other Vrex, slightly smaller than Mirax. "Is that why you were able to form this bond? Because your species understands pack dynamics?" "Maybe," Sarah said. "Or maybe it's because humans have been doing this for thousands of years. We took wolves and made them into dogs. We took wild cats and convinced them to live with us. We've domesticated horses, cattle, even birds of prey. We understand that predators can be partners, not just threats." Telev made a sound that the translator rendered as uncomfortable. "Most species in the Council find that concept disturbing. To willingly bring predators into your homes, your lives." "But it works," Sarah interrupted. "It makes us stronger. The wolves we befriended helped us hunt and protected our camps. The cats kept rodents away from our food stores. We survived better because we learned to cooperate with other species, even predator species." Glint got bored with the conversation and wandered over to investigate the visitors. She approached slowly, cautiously. her plates showing curiosity mixed with wariness. The three observers froze. Should we be concerned? Venice asked, her voice tight. She's just curious, Sarah said. Don't make sudden moves and you'll be fine. Glint reached Mirax first. She sniffed his lower appendage, her small nose working. Then she looked up at him with large, questioning eyes. Mirax stared back, all 6 eyes wide. She wants to know if you're safe, Sarah explained. If you want to pass the test, hold out your hand. Palm up, non-threatening. Let her smell you. Mirax hesitated, then slowly extended one of his manipulation appendages. Glint sniffed it thoroughly, then did something that made Mirax's eyes widen even further. She rubbed her head against his hand, marking him with her scent. Congratulations, Sarah said with a grin. She's decided you're part of the pack. I am part of a Vakro stalker pack, Mirax said slowly, as if testing the words. This is going to be an excellent paper. Over the following weeks, the observation team became regular visitors. They documented everything. How Sarah fed the cubs, teaching them to hunt using drones that simulated prey. How she set boundaries when their play became too rough, establishing herself as the authority figure. How she treated their minor injuries and checked their health. How she still, every evening, let them curl up against her like they had that first night, even though they were now too large to fit inside her coat. The cubs grew to accept the observers. Shard remained the boldest, often approaching the visitors and demanding attention. Glint became friendly with everyone, her curiosity overriding any caution. Prism stayed reserved but would occasionally allow Telev to sit near him. One evening, after a particularly long observation session, Telev sat with Sarah while the cubs dozed nearby. The twin suns were setting, painting everything in shades of purple and gold. I have been thinking about something you said, Telev began carefully, about humans and compassion for predators. Yeah? My species does not understand this. We see predators as threats always. The idea of voluntarily spending time with them, caring for them, protecting them, it is completely foreign to our thinking. Sarah nodded. I get that. Your species evolved as prey. Your survival depended on avoiding predators. Yes, but humans evolved as both. You were prey for larger predators, but you also became predators yourselves. You understand both sides. That's true. Telev was quiet for a moment, watching the sleeping cubs. I think that is what frightens the council about your species. Not that you are dangerous, though you certainly are, but that you are dangerous and compassionate. We do not know how to predict what humans will protect or what they will fight. Your mercy is as unpredictable as your violence. Sarah considered that. Maybe that's not a bad thing. Maybe it means we make choices based on what's right, not just what's safe or easy. Perhaps. Telev turned to look at her. What will you do when they are fully grown? They will be large, powerful predators. They could easily harm you, even accidentally. Sarah looked at the 3 cubs. Shard was snoring softly, his large head pillowed on Glint's back. Prism slept slightly apart as he always did, but his tail was intertwined with his siblings. I'll deal with it. We'll figure out new boundaries as they grow. They'll need more space, more independence, but I'll still be here. They'll still be mine. You speak of them as family. They are family. They chose to trust me that first night when they crawled under my coat. I chose to protect them from the Alpha. Those choices made us a pack. Species doesn't change that. Telev was quiet for a long time. Finally, he said, I am writing a report for the council about what I have observed here. I want to include that statement if you will allow it. Sure. The report is titled The Deathworlder's Gentleness. It is about how humans are capable of both extreme violence and extreme compassion, often simultaneously. I believe the council needs to understand this duality. They need to see that humans are not simply dangerous. They are complex, Sarah smiled. We try. 6 months later, the cubs were nearly full-grown. They were massive now, each weighing over 70 kilograms with crystalline armor that had hardened to nearly impenetrable strength. They could hunt successfully on their own. They could survive without Sarah's help. Thank you for watching and comment for next part.